Latin America, right? So our focus, our premise is Latin Central America. So we're going to work to import all our coffees from that region, right, specifically. And so our name itself is actually the first two letters of each co-founder's name. So there's three of us. A guy, Guillermo Diaz, myself, Levi Lee, and TJ Jose Villamil. So TJ's formal name is Jose. So Gulejo. That's where it comes from. And as our tagline kind of says sip the difference. So, not only are you getting a great premium cup of coffee, the first phase about quality, and the second phase about freshness, but you're also at the end of it, you're making a difference by giving. And so what we are is a social enterprise. We are a social enterprise to the fullest in saying that we give away 15% of whatever we make to go back to the communities at large where we're importing our coffee from. So wherever we're sourcing our beans, we're going to help those communities at large. And so what we really want to do is that helps distinguish and separate ourselves. Yeah, we're a great coffee company, but at the same time now we have a social mission, and we want to help improve the quality of lives of other people in the process. So what do we do with that 15%? Well, I'm going to give you a little structure. We operate right now as an LLC. So I'll give you a background a little bit on the business entity itself. So we operate as an LLC. What we're doing with the giving portion that I think is interesting for you guys, we're in the process of creating a 501c3 foundation. And that is where we'll import our 15% of our earnings to go to. And that 15% is revenue. It's not profit. It's 15% of revenue. So we're very serious, obviously, in the giving phase of what we do. So that 15% of revenue we're going to import it into that foundation, the Gulejo Foundation, and it'll actually be our way to give and operate out of that. So it's important to recognize, too, and even in business structure, that for a social enterprise, that's an easy way that we kind of figured out we can make that work the best, right? So that foundation. So what do we do with it? So the 15%. So 3 phases of what we're trying to do with it. So our goal is to get down on the ground and evaluate, and the 3 things that we're looking to actually help improve or have some form of impact on is economic development, educational opportunities, and health initiatives. So we want to be able to fund basic needs, help people that with basic necessities that they may not have access to, or some of the basic, like we said, sanitary aspects. And then you kind of phase into education, improving the economy, something along that way, and on a community level. So a lot of people, and I'm not saying knocking any other larger entities out there, but everybody knows about Tom's shoes, right? Anybody wear Tom's? Anybody have a pair of Tom's in here? All right, at least you guys know the premise of what Tom's is, right? Buy a pair, give a pair, right? So the thing, though, that's intriguing is that there's a lot of literature that's starting to come around these days that, Tom's gives that pair of shoes, but hey, what's it actually do? It kind of sometimes actually hurts the local economies where they're giving, because the shoes itself hinders the actual shoemaker that should be making shoes in that local region and be making money off of that themselves. So in some aspects, it could actually hinder process a little bit. So what we want to do is we want to help encourage, we want to help facilitate economic development or educational opportunities, because we know education is the biggest key to success factor to economic stimulation later on, right? So we want to be able to give those phases. And then also on the immediate, near term, is if there are health needs that we can help address, then we want to be able to do that too. So our goal, actually, TJ and myself, and what we're hiring a 4th person here pretty soon, are going to look to actually travel down to Nicaragua, where we're sourcing our beans from at the end of this month, and it'll be our first on-the-ground experience for us. Our initial partner, Guillermo, had went down earlier this year. So a little even further background, we formed this LLC back in February of this year, so February 2013. Guillermo went and was on the ground in Nicaragua in March. 1 month later, so March 2013. And since then, Guillermo, or TJ and myself haven't been able to go, but like we said, we're looking to go at the end of this month for 2 phases to work on our Gulejo way aspect, the giving portion for our foundation. So setting up those means, evaluating the landscape, seeing what we can do with it, and how we can maybe either tie into things that are ongoing or help address needs that are already there. And then also to work on sourcing for the next harvest season. So for us right now, obviously we're a commodity company, we don't have technology, but we're kind of incorporating some technology in what we do, and we'll get into that. But what we're really trying to do is go down and figure out the next crop, since we are a commodity, and the biggest thing right now is kind of a foot race to make sure you're finding the right coffees and finding those people that are out there, maybe in isolated places. So the biggest part is getting on the ground and being there, and actually finding people you can either network with, contact, find the different farms, and actually build rapport with them. So those are really important things of what we're doing. So it's all about relationship building as we're learning. The big thing is about finding the right avenues and pathways to communicate with people, and then actually setting up and actually putting a foot in the ground and making a stance and actually saying we want to make a difference. So we kind of base our premise on the 3 different things. On quality, so that goes back to being quality, right? We're getting premium coffee. We're roasting as quickly and as early as possible in the process, so we get it to you as fresh as possible. We literally, the coffee that we just served at the farmer's market today was actually roasted yesterday and ground this morning. And some of the other bags we sold were just even roasted just on Sunday. So our oldest coffee right now is from Sunday. So, freshly roasted, really important because it makes some of the biggest differences in taste, right? In a commodity industry, maybe people aren't necessarily buying into maybe the giving aspect on the end, but you have to compete on quality and taste, right? So
yeah, on that note, if you guys go buy a coffee at Publix right now or a supermarket, chances are it's 6 months old in terms of roast date. That's why they don't even bother to put the roast date on there. So a lot of the times, roasted coffee goes bad after a month when it's whole bean, right?
Yeah, no, very true. One of the things that we're learning is that, especially with artisan roasted coffee, is there a bag over there? I thought we had one bag somewhere. May have left it in the car, actually. My fault. So we put the roast date directly on it. We write it in. We hand write the actual roast date on it intentionally, so you see how fresh and how much of quality it really is, right? It's really important to us. So we're kind of competing all levels. We want to be an artisan product. We want to make sure that we're freshly roasting, get it to you in your hands as soon as possible, and then at the end, obviously, making that difference with the giving portion. So that's a real premise of how we operate. And then I think that some of the things that one of our biggest goals right now is to work to stretch even more than just saying coffee. And so I think turning it over to TJ a little bit to talk about this idea that we started with Gulejo, the coffee company, and then what we're becoming is Gulejo, the coffee company, and more. And so what we're really trying to build is a lifestyle, but also a brand around it that stretches just beyond coffee. So has anybody heard of us before, even tonight, or seeing the tech events or anything? Ben bought a t-shirt at one point. Kind of the buzz is kind of like brewing. But the thing is that we want to build and be more than just coffee. And so I think this is the perfect time for TJ to talk a little more about this.
Yeah, so, it's one of those things that had you talked to me a year ago, and you said, TJ, you're going to start a coffee company next year, I would have laughed at your face. I would have told you there's absolutely no way I'm going to start a coffee company, right? I had kind of all these things going for me. I was really involved on campus, and all of my peers around the country were getting jobs at Deloitte, at GE, at all these great big companies. But I was here getting my master's in entrepreneurship, and I started listening to some of my mentors, and I was like, hey, there's something cool going on in Gainesville, and I want to be a part of it. I remember sitting in your shoes in spring, right? Just this past spring at a couple of the tech meetings, thinking like, okay, I want to do it. This was when Ronnie and Ian were sitting up here yelling at kids, go start a company and stop bitching out about it because it is so worth it. I was like, okay, I'm a little fired up by that. I could kind of do that. I could see myself doing that. But then all of a sudden, what do I want to do? I met Levi, right? Levi already had his day job at the UAA. And we were sitting down talking, man. We were thinking about app ideas. We wanted to start a TripAdvisor company, something like that. We were thinking about doing all these crazy different things. But at the time, they didn't seem so crazy because they looked like good ideas. And I still think they are, and I still think we're going to start a bunch of these companies one day, because that's the goal. But at the time, it didn't seem as feasible. Talking to some of my mentors and some other entrepreneurs here in town, it was pretty evident that maybe that wasn't the best route for us to go. Well, Levi knew this guy Guillermo in town, and they had been talking about a coffee company for about a year. And the opportunity came around where, hey, TJ, we need a third partner. We want to be equal partners in this business. Do you want to join? And without even meeting Guillermo or without even trying coffee, I was like, you know what, yes. I have nothing planned in May, and I want to start a company. And I want to really prove what I had been preaching. Because for those of you guys that don't know me, my parents started a company in 1992, and it's a small economic consulting firm. But I truly believe in entrepreneurship and how it is the American way. And I was getting my master's in entrepreneurship. I'm like, why am I getting this degree? Why do I believe in all this if I'm not going to start my own company? So I was like, okay, Levi, I'm in. I met Guillermo, and then it felt right. I met Guillermo, our third partner, and it was just one of those things that bang. We hit it off the wall. We were going to do this. Then he brought back the coffee that we were actually going to be using, and then my mind went even more in the clouds. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And all of a sudden, in May, when I graduated, and I stopped doing all my involvement on campus, and I stopped having my master's, it was one of those things where I was like, wow, I'm off the deep end. I really started this company, and now I have to focus on it full time. And little did I know, I'm 23 years old. I had no idea what to do. So all of a sudden, I'm looking around, trying to figure out about this coffee business. But then I was like, wait. We had this cupping session, right, at Levi's house. And a cupping session is kind of like a wine tasting session, but it's for coffee. It's the same exact thing. And we had a bunch of our friends who were entrepreneurs over. And I'll never forget Ray Land. Who knows Ray Land in town? All right, Ray Land started Fabulous Coach Lines when he was 18 years old. Little backstory on him. Fabulous Coach Lines is a motor coach company that he started when he was 18. And he grew it, and now he sold half of it, and he's like doing steamboats and stuff. He's absolutely incredible. But if there's one person that can really speak a testament about starting a company in an industry where there's a ton of competition, and that it's a really old industry, and that there's no way you can get involved because you're 18 and 23 years old, it was Ray. Because he had proven everybody wrong. In the motor coach industry, he's known as the kid, because everybody else is in their 60s and who owned the company in their family since cars were invented. And here comes along Ray, and he disrupts it all. So Ray sits there with our coffee, and he sips it, and he looks at it, and he goes, TJ, Levi, Guillermo, I absolutely love what you guys are doing, because coffee is an essence. It's something that people drink every morning to be productive, to get fueled, to really start their day on the right note. And when you have this good tasting coffee, it's going to change the world for everybody around you. And I was like, man, if he's saying that, then I can absolutely do this. And then we started realizing that it's not just about the coffee. It's about the social responsibility. But more than that, it's about this culture that we want to create. And that culture is around entrepreneurship, something that we're both passionate about. We both got our degree here, our master's in entrepreneurship, the MSE. So this is something that we know is the right thing to do for our generation, the millennial generation, anybody else that wants to try it, no matter how old you are. I always tell people my parents started their company when they were 42 years old. They had me, I was 3 years old, 3 teenage daughters, and they had no money. And if there's any time to start a company, it's not then. It's not then. And they did it. And they've been sustainable now for the last couple of years. They've been just doing it. So if there's any time to do it, it's going to be now. So we value the American way of starting a company and building something on your own. And we want to be a part of that. We want to fuel it, and we want to brand our coffee around those that do, those that are productive, and those that are creative. And that's something that we get really fired up about. And now it's something that we blog about. He has a blog called Pursuing Passion that you can find on our blog. I do a podcast now every Thursday called the Floridapreneur Weekly, where I bring on those other entrepreneurs that are young and doing something really cool, and I talk to them for an hour about business advice, books, any quotes, business quotes, or ideas that they have. I actually have one Floridapreneur in the room, Ben Aarons over here. He was on the show with me last week, right? Yeah. And it's absolutely phenomenal. And I send it to all my friends around the state of Florida, and all of them are working for like companies and stuff like that. And they're like, TJ, what you're doing is so damn cool. I want to be a part of it. I'm like, dude, you could do that. And that's the whole point of this fucking... Yeah, sorry. That's the whole point about this podcast.
Bombs in here, it's cool.
I know, I'm sorry. All right. We're trying to keep it clean. But I'm like, that's the whole point about the podcast, is like, I want to build this company with Levi and Guillermo, because I want to prove the world that you can do it when you're 23 years old. That you can do it right out of college. And that you can do it in an industry that's as old as time. That's coffee. That nobody thought you can do. So right now, we're 4 months in. We're fired up. And we're still learning something new every single day. But we know that we want to fuel entrepreneurs and like-minded individuals like us. And that's why we want to sponsor them. We actually have a funny little quote where we say what Gatorade is to like sports athletes, what Red Bull is to like extreme athletes, Gulejo is to business athletes. And we want to provide the fuel for those business athletes and all those companies in Gainesville that work really, really hard, wake up early and go to bed late at night, because we feel like we could fuel that entrepreneurship, that productivity, and that creativity. So that's something that we're really passionate about. And as you can tell, like, we're following our passion through coffee. Like, who would have thunk it? We're doing it. So that's just a little bit of background about what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that kind of gets into a little bit our strategy too. Like, we kind of want to give you guys a lay of the landscape of sorts. You know, TJ hit on that. Okay, so we have this idea that we want to fuel entrepreneurs, and we want to fuel those people that are out there doing stuff and being creative and being cool and all those things. Great, now what's our strategy? So you look around, right? You guys are in here in the Entrepreneurship Club, you're considering ideas, right? Well, you have to put together a strategy that goes with it. So, okay, well, what does that mean? Because do we have a winning product now? Do we think we have an amazing team? Well, how are we going to sell this thing? Who are we going to give it to, right? So then you start getting into those things. I think it's really important that we have this idea of like coffee for the creatives, not just for businesses, but also for the average Joe, right? That's out there trying to do something, be more, right? Folks just like this room. And so the thing is that, okay, so that's B2B and B2C, business to business, business to consumer. And so we go, okay, how do we brand these things out differently, and how do we start selling, right? So we started looking around at strategy, and this thing is still an ongoing thing. And the best part about any entrepreneurial venture is that you guys know that, fluidity really means that things change every day, right? Anybody have like a venture themselves that they're kind of doing, or out there kind of already, implementing or trying to? Yeah. You guys know for sure that these things change, and every day is a new day, as we're saying. So one of the biggest things is to go, okay, how do we start analyzing? What are we going to start doing? How do we start selling? So we go, all right, well, we'll start hitting a couple of markets since we don't have a retail store space just yet. We need to start looking for an office space where we can actually do business. We need to start finding outlets where we can sell business to business. And that was where the Coffee for the Creatives initiative started kind of coming from, is that, okay, you're an entrepreneur, you're young, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm young, let's go fuel all the other people that are around us. All right, we'll start there. We'll start with the business community in Gainesville, so the entrepreneurial community, the startup community. That's perfect. That's us. We're passionate, we're energetic, we want to have fun, and do all those cool things. Well, all right, so now we got to start approaching businesses. And then on the flip side of that too, start selling in some of the markets. You got to pick the right market since we're a premium quality product. Well, that doesn't mean go sell at the cheapest place and cheapest venue in town. You got to find the right markets for it. So the downtown market, which is kind of a more quality-esque environment, you want to sell there. Town of Tioga. You want to start looking around at Hale and different locations where you can start actually selling. Well, eventually, hey, we have a retail storefront. How do you brand this thing out? Well, that's kind of one of our processes right now. Is like, hey, eventually, if and when we go to a storefront, what does that look like? Okay, we have this idea of Coffee for the Creatives. It's kind of up. I mean, the text doesn't do it justice. Obviously, that we're definitely on the MVP model, minimum viable product, as many of you guys probably are familiar with. That you kind of go with this idea that, okay, well, what does this start looking like? Well, we kind of want to brand this out around technology, around entrepreneurship, about creating, about being energetic and enthusiastic. All right, so we're going to change the model a little bit about an environment. And that's really important. Then you start getting into, okay, how do we continue to build this brand, right? So we have that niche, we have that focus, the creatives, the entrepreneurs, the startup community, and what's even better about that somebody here right now, Duncan Cavanaugh, is a part of Starter Space, and a couple of the other guys that are here, even a part of Starter Space as their own entities. We were able to actually join them. And we actually now have an office space working out of Starter Space, which is a great facility here in town on West University, 308 West University, which is great. And it's a collection, a co-working space of small businesses, newly started companies that are trying to just get a basis and get going, right? It's kind of like one of the new founders pads in town, or innovation hubs. And so we can utilize that now. And that's one, our working facility, which is great because now we have a mobilized office space. But two, at the same time, then, it gives us more legitimacy even in the startup community. Because now we're not only providing coffee for entrepreneurs, and we're giving already to some of the other startups in town, so it just continues to build brand equity, right? So it's really important is that your vision, okay, now you identify strategically who you want to sell to. Then you have to say, how can I continue to process along and chug along in those steps to continue to build that brand equity in the markets, in those target markets, those niche markets that you want. So it's a really important lesson, I think, in entrepreneurship is that you identify your target, but how can you continue to cascade or kind of, keep elevating your status amongst those brand equity communities, right? A really, really important takeaway, I think, is I'm a big strategy guy. 5 minutes left.
Then you got Q&A. Just
perfect. But no, that's really important. So we want to really hit that home with you guys because it's really important as you guys start. It's one thing to say, hey, I want to go do this thing. It's one thing to identify your market. Now, how do I continue to keep this thing growing and building, right? And so we have this niche, but then we have a broader community. And one of the biggest things too is strategy now is that, okay, now we're supplying some of these entrepreneurs. How do we hit the broader business community at large since we really want to focus on a lot of B2B sales? Okay, so recently we just joined, it's called BNI, Business Networking Inc., and we also joined the Chamber of Commerce. And so for us as young business professionals, right? So I'm only 26, TJ's 23. And so we're kind of like our main operation. Our third partner, Guillermo, kind of helps with some of our financial background and everything because he already has an established business in the financial wealth management industry. So that's his forte. And so we are a lot of the operations, logistics, marketing. We're kind of doing all the day-to-day stuff, and we're just trying to hustle this business, right, and move it along. And so the biggest thing is that we go, okay, how can we start identifying, and how do we look amongst the greater business community, not just amongst folks like this in this room that have your own entities in the startup community. How do we get to the bigger group? How do we look professional in front of them? Well, we start looking to join these associations, these clubs, these environments where we're looked at as peers and not just the kid, like a Ray Land type kind of in the motor coach industry, but we want to look professional. So it's been a great one. So TJ, doing business development, joined BNI Group, one of the chapters here in town. Well, that's been a great outlet for us to get in front of other businesses like Edwards with the gift certificates and more aspect. It's been a great outlet for us to get in front of people and to be able to connect on an equal level where people are going to hear our story, hear our pitch, and just like you guys absorbed about, okay, they have awesome product, they roast it locally, cool, and then they even give, that's awesome. How do I do this? How do I get more? And that's helped us get equal footing. And becoming a chamber member, you know, in wherever your respective territory, it's been big for us kind of on that landscape as well. And it's helped us kind of just build rapport in the greater business community. So really important to see is that, okay, how do I focus? And then here's a perfect example. I'll give you one little example that really fits this. How do I focus, but then how do I take it broad? You know, one of the biggest examples, somebody brought this example to me, was about eBay. Do you know how eBay started? Anybody, like, this like kind of Q&A type? Like, can anybody answer like how eBay started? What was their first product that they sold? What was it?
Baseball cards?
No, it wasn't baseball cards. It was actually books. eBay started with books. And so, okay, they start with this idea of books and selling. All right, awesome. Well, they expanded really quickly into a whole lot of other products that you just continue to name, right? And so this guy's telling me the story. Is Jim Kostler, is the CEO of the Youngstown Business Incubator up in Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio. They're an amazing entity in itself. And so he's telling me this story. He's like, look, they started with this aspect. And you know what they did? They focused on that, they crushed it, and then they expanded. And they just continued to grow out of that. And so nobody really remembers where they started. They were able to have a niche, and then they had a broader focus in mind. They always wanted to expand. And that's kind of our concept and our strategy, that we want to focus on entrepreneurs, we want to feel entrepreneurship, creativity, and where it's fun, passion, and brand. But we want to be able to hit to everybody at large. And so that's a really important thing, I think, is a great lesson I took away from that conversation with him one day. And so I kind of like leave you guys on that note a little bit. I know we have some kind of just summarizing thoughts of sorts about who we are, but also just some of the lessons that we've learned here in the next few minutes before we get to Q&A time.